Hi everyone, welcome to this class. So I'm going to teach you how to paint this bird. And we're going to focus a lot on the inside. So what I'm saying is we're gonna wet the inside part of the bird to add the colors wet on wet. That's how we can achieve that softness in feathers. And then we will also lift colors. We'll get to that in a second. But I also want to wet a little bit of the background to add softness on the outside. Now, how do I determine like what area needs to be wetted also on the outside, so the background? It's the lightest parts that I see in the bird. For example, like we have the wing here, and then there's a highlight right there over here. This is the area where I want colors from the bird to bleed towards the background too, because this part seems softest to me and it's lightest. And also we have a leg here and here, and you can tell like maybe it's a little out of focus when you look at the reference, but there's some fuzzy hair in there too. So that's how I kind of go about it. And then where I have like darker areas, so let's say the head of the bird where we have black a little bit there, that's okay for me to do like with a hard edge on top. And I'm not going to wet the background. I'm just going to add colors on the inside, and I'll let these colors to sit on the inside without like wetting the background and letting colors to bleed towards the background. So again, this a light value of a color mix. And then if I go to the mid value, in between you have other values, like between the dark, we have dark values, we have mid values, and then we have light values, but in between you can create other values. But here I'm trying to mix like a mid value, and this is my mid value right here. So at some point I will be going with this kind of value, but this light value, just to show you the contrast here, this is the light value I want in this area and this area here. So I'm going to start diluting the yellows first. I think I have too much water a little bit. The thing is that I'm going to mostly paint this bird wet on wet. So that's my favorite technique when it comes to animals, because then you're able to create that softness. This was Imidazzle Lemon. Neutral tint. I'm just gonna leave it the way it is because I'm not gonna get to the darks right away. And then indigo, just a little bit. And I do want some background here, right? So the colors from the bird should bleed towards the background. And it's okay to go over the legs, to be honest, because we're just going to add colors here, so don't worry too much about it. Think about it like where you want the paint to bleed towards the background. And I'm going to grab my quill brush. This is my own line. This is Songbird line, and I'm gonna have these available hopefully by the time I release this video. So first colors are going to be like some raw sienna, yellow ochre, and some quin red. Actually, I'm thinking maybe I should start, like I said earlier, with the blues, but I think I'm gonna start a little bit here first. Some of that quin red, and even feels like a half and half like ratio. It's like it's gonna dilute fast with water because I have wet paper here. And then some of that lemon yellow too over the edges. So you kind of want to like use a brush as you're like recreating strokes for the feathers. So you're pulling it, you're pretending like you're actually painting feathers in a way. And I do want to add some of that blue, and this brush, like, I want to keep it the way it is with that color. I'm just gonna grab my golden too. Just a little bit of that cobalt blue with quin red. So now we are adding some blue violet. And it's okay to go over this part where we just added the yellows and some of that lemon yellow, or even that long yellow, and come back to these areas and choose where I want to add this yellow. So a little more of that yellow I can see here, but more of that imidazzle yellow. This is where I do see that kind of yellow popping, and on this side as well. Don't grab any new water. If you're grabbing new water, you're going to create a bloom most likely, because these areas are drying. So now I have this part. I do have that yellow undertone there. I'm grabbing more of the indigo and Van Dyke brown. And I just want to make this part a little darker. So now that I came back, the paint settled a bit. If I have time, I hope I can still add a little bit of yellow. I'm going to grab a tiny bit of that Imidazzalon lemon, and hopefully, yeah, it's still good. I'm gonna add it on top of its head, and maybe a little bit here too. Just some yellow, and some of those areas. Maybe I see a little bit of yellow here too, but I have to be careful because I can see like the paper has dried a bit, quite a bit. It's kind of like this. You go very fast. You have to go fast. If you don't go fast and you go slow, you create a thicker line. So you want to go very fast. Even if sometimes it looks like you didn't do anything, that's because you're trying to use the tip of your brush. That's how it goes, like to create like these thinner lines. If I'm gonna have the paint even more diluted with water, it might work better too. And keep in mind that if you have a rough watercolor paper, you might need actually more water because that texture will kind of stop it a little bit. It will become more like dry brushing. You don't want dry brushing, you just want like continuous lines. And maybe I'll add like a couple hair over here just because there is a wing. And maybe not there. I guess I don't need it there. So I think I'm fine. Something like that. It looks pretty soft to me. So the next thing, what I like to do is focus on details. So that's what tells me that, okay, that will be my undertone color. That will be part of my undertone layer. So again, when I see that the highlight has some color in it, and in this case, it's like a blue violet. So follow blue with some quin red. That's when I know, okay, this is going to have that undertone layer, and I'm going to start with those colors, and then I'm going to add a little bit of the other colors that I see. And when you look at the iris, you see maybe, what is that, like it's like almost like a sepia color, but for that I'm actually going to use some burnt sienna, maybe with some yellow ochre. I'm going to start with the lightest colors first, even it's not the color that we actually see in there. With the beak, I'm going to start by wetting it as well. So for the eye, we're gonna wet it first and then add the phthalo blue with quin red and some Van Dyke brown, but yellow ochre first. Or I said burnt sienna. I should say burnt sienna, yellow ochre. And then for the beak, wet it and then add from the top phthalo blue with quin red. And the first thing I'm going to do is grab this round brush too. This is Cosmo Topspin by Da Vinci. I'm going to actually wet this part. Just go around it. I have quite a bit of water. Well, smaller areas dry super fast anyway. There you go. Somewhere there. And then I'm going to grab that cobalt blue and just apply maybe a little bit of a phthalo blue too. There's some blue here on this side. It's a small amount. It's just a little bit. It's like you're doing it in such a lazy way. Like you're not trying to really cover too much. And you still want some highlights. But now I have a color in there. So that's it. I think that's it. Of course, there's a couple more things we could do. First of all, we could add another layer here to make this part darker. If you feel like adding another layer to make the back a little darker, then what I would suggest is wet more than you are going to work on. So let's say you're only planning to add color, another layer over here. Wet it all the way here because you never know. You might add more color here and there and you don't want hard edges.